Hello, welcome to the Quad.
Won't you lend your lungs to me?
Podcast.
Mine are collapsing. Plant my feet and bitterly breathe up the time that's passed. Breath I'll take and breath I'll give. Pray the day's not poised. Stand among the ones that live in lonely indecision.
All right, welcome to the Crackpot Podcast. It's July 17th, and James is somewhere in the Rocky Mountains with the Sea Daddy. Welcome, Sea Daddy.
Thank you.
Hey, Lynn.
She has a voice like a child.
Somebody wrote in one time and said it sounded like a truck driver talking to a co-ed.
That was right.
That was me.
That was right. I mean, that was Sea Daddy. Oh, well.
Hey,
there goes the student.
He's been at city places. I'm sure he's been at a truck stop that was right next to a Catholic high school at some point in his life. So he's probably heard such conversations.
Well, I used to hang out in places like that.
What were you doing in places like that?
Hanging out.
Oh, just hanging out. Okay.
Yeah, what? You know, how was research, social research? Good grief.
Well, James, why don't you tell us a little bit about
Very serious.
Yes, very serious. About your journeys the last couple weeks you've been on the road, or week or so, right? You've been on the road and in the Rockies. Tell us what's been going on.
Uber Joe picked me up at my former domicile at 11:46 a.m. and he dropped me off at the train station in Baltimore, which is a very deserted, very old place. And when I went to pay him, he said no. So I went to tip him, and he said no. And he gave me a $50 tip. So I actually got tipped by my Uber driver.
Aww.
And that $50 came in handy because I spent 2 days sitting next to a woman who absolutely would not shut up. And I was actually... she was irritating the passengers around us so much that I started asking her questions. Anytime that she would stop to catch a breath and there would be a danger that there might be 30 seconds of silence, I'd ask her another question about her army of children and grandchildren, farm animals, pets, past and present, and so on. I got some good stories out of her. It worked better in an inebriated state. So I spent that $50 on the train in the wicker car downstairs, going down to get myself drinks so I could make sure that I slept soundly after she had kept everybody else awake.
Did you enjoy the train?
I really liked the train.
Yeah, good accommodations.
Yeah, the train was very more comfortable than any place that I've lived until now. I'm now in the Rocky Mountain Redoubt with the man in the high castle, literally on the top of a mountain. He's extended my indenture from 7 to 14 days. Okay, so I've been digging ditches on the top of a mountain. There's a purpose to it. I'm told that drainage ditches are really good when you live on a mountain.
He said he wanted to work out, stay in shape, so... Hey,
you're doing him a favor.
Yeah, it feels very good. It's like sparring every day using the different digging devices. Tomorrow I'll be driving posts in with this ram. It looks like the only time I've seen anything like this was when the front doors of houses in Baltimore were getting knocked in by narco squads.
Like a
so
battering
I'm going to
ram?
be using something like that to pound in a state.
Yeah, people sometimes hit themselves in the forehead with those things. You don't want to stand over it when you're pounding the stakes in. Is that true, Sea Daddy?
Yeah, but they only do that once.
You learn your lesson after that.
James is smarter. Yeah, he's smart enough.
All right, so you're up in the Rocky Mountains doing manual labor for your room and board. Sea Daddy, can you tell us how you wound up in the Rocky Mountains? Because you're not native to that area, is that true?
Yeah, that's right. I'm not from around here. I just first wanted altitude and clean air. I wanted 4 distinct seasons. And I wanted the chance to hunt whenever I felt like it. And I also wanted to find a place where I could, I'm a woman and I can hide out with a good field of fire all around and just wait for it,
Yeah, I know how you feel. I don't have that privilege, but it does feel like we're waiting for something.
Well, I worked myself into a sweat for 40 odd years to actually create this castle. So it's not, you can't pick them up down there at the Walmart and drag them over to your land. It's hard to set up.
Yeah.
And the best thing about it is most people can't.
That's true.
And
You wrote for us your sort of fly on the wall report from the Singapore summit. Did you have a correspondent out in Helsinki a few days ago or yesterday?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I don't let anything happen in the world where I don't send a spy. You did see the picture of Putin and Trump in leather with the dog leash and all that, huh?
I tried not to look at it, but I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So.
Yeah. He sent that picture, and that's about all I needed to know. I figured it would be somewhat different than it was in Korea, but my correspondent was obviously on something.
It's the risk you run when you send your people overseas.
That's right.
You don't know what's going to be illegal in that country.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you gotta clamp down on
the
expense card too. Too much liquor or whatever it is.
Yeah. Did you say too much liquor?
No. That's not possible, is it?
Wow, what a concept. No, that's a concept. I'll have to try it one day.
Well, maybe you could recite the mysteries of the wonders of life. The answer that Tom T. Hall got from there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Faster horses, younger women, older whiskey, and more money.
That's the secret of life right there.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Who does that come from?
Tom T. Hall.
Oh, okay.
He wrote a song called Faster Horses. It's an interesting song for a redneck.
One of the funniest things you ever wrote was that David Allan Coe was a race healer. Is that what you called him?
Yes.
I laughed really
very
hard.
Sensitive. God.
James was going to ask you where you grew up.
Yeah, the part of the country that you grew up in. Where did you get that accent from?
I grew up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Can you spell that?
I'm going to spell it Hattisburg. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like Hattie. Hattisburg.
Yeah. Hattiesburg.
Yeah, it's a railroad town.
But you've lived all over.
Well, yeah, wouldn't you? Hattiesburg, Mississippi is a great place, but it ain't. It's a rather small playing field, and there's so much shenanigans going on. How can you stay in one place that long? I couldn't.
Now, what's a sea daddy? That has to do with your trade, 40 years of.
Yeah. You get young guys in, and they go through a kind of a on-the-job training apprentice. Everybody gets issued a sea daddy or chooses a sea daddy or whatever. And you just sort of guide them along their way and try to help them out over the little stupid mistakes people make. And you just sort of guide them. It's like having an apprentice. And it makes you feel like you're smart, because you're dealing with these dumb people. So it's very pleasant.
Now, you worked on barges and rigs, oil barges and rigs. Is there another type of vessel that you worked on?
Dynamically positioned diving vessels. Where they can hold and hover on the surface through the use of water jets and a computerized system that reads the seas, and it'll hold that boat down to 1 meter, and you can dive out of there and put a bell down and do productive diving with knickers to set and pick up. So it's a lot quicker, cleaner operation. But those are purpose-built diving vessels.
Is that what you used on the Monitor?
No, we had a barge on the Monitor. That was just a big, 400 by 95-foot barge.
And that was off of Norfolk where it sunk in the Atlantic?
Yeah. And the U.S. Navy was actually doing the diving, and we were there for technical support.
And how about the Andrea Doria?
That was off a Gulf of Mexico workboat, about 180 foot long, and it was on anchors. In fact, we had 8 anchors out over that wreck, and Hurricane Hugo came through while we were there.
Where was the wreck?
On the bottom.
It was coming from Italy, so I assume it sunk in the Atlantic, but I don't know what part of the Atlantic it sunk in.
Yeah, Montauk, Long Island.
Okay, almost made it.
Yeah, almost did. Yeah, Montauk.
So is it like a recovery operation or salvage?
We went to get the Bank of Rome safe, and we also wanted the purser's safe, because the purser's safe, of course, would have jewelry and keepsakes and whatnot. The Bank of Rome safe, it turned out they'd emptied it before they abandoned the ship, and it was sitting there with its door open, and a bag of aluminum coins fused into a brick. And that's what we got out of the Bank of Rome safe. That was the purpose for going there, and we just wanted to penetrate the wreck. And this fellow, Peter Gimble, who was the Gimble department store guy, was in the whole thing. And they were making a movie of it. And the movie exists, and I'm in that movie. And it's called Andrea Doria, The Final Chapter, or something like that. I've only seen it once years ago. And if you ever wanted to know what a bunch of jackass divers looked like offshore, that is a good one.
I'll have to check it out.
What was your job description?
Life support technician. They call us LSTs. And we run all the gas and breathing media and keep the diver's depths right and all that stuff.
Do you ever dive yourself?
Yeah, I dove long enough to know it wasn't for me.
Okay.
I don't mind snorkeling. I don't mind going anywhere that doesn't exceed 30 feet.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get into decompression situations. Because I've run decompression all my life. It's bad for you. But my wife is certified scuba here just recently, and she's going to head out to Indonesia to get into some good water. And, that's great. But I just have no interest. It's like a busman's holiday. Besides, she'll have a better time, with all the muscle boys diving off the boat, with me on the other side of the planet. And she needs a break, right?
Besides the diver and the LST, what's the other categories of people that work on these barges?
Well, it starts after you have a diving superintendent, and then you have 2 shift supervisors, 2 shift LSTs, and then you got about 8 tenders that work deck and so forth, and then you have 1 staff. They work 12-hour shifts. You're either day shift, night shift.
And the work's a month. You work a whole month, and you on a month, off a month.
Well, on some jobs, that's recently, since they put regulations. You can't work offshore more than 28 days at a time without rotating out. But I've worked on jobs that were up to 4.5 months offshore.
And you work every day?
Yeah, you work every day. Yeah, you can't take a day off.
Riley informed me who had the ugliest women in the world from his experience working.
Yes.
What nation is that?
Panama.
Okay. So
I'm telling you, man, it's like Aborigine City down there. Yeah.
Oh dear.
So what do you attribute that the poor looks of the people in Panama? What do you think that stems from?
Oh, the gazillions of sailors that has washed up on those shores over the centuries.
So
yeah. What else could it be?
Okay. So it's not an advertisement for miscegenation, right?
No. Oh.
That's one of the assistants there.
Yeah, future handful.
Oh, she's already a handful.
Probably current.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had a temperance meeting the other night. It was like 8 hours of whiskey, some beef jerky, and a dog to share the jerky with. And I was asking him questions about his different places he worked, and I wrote down notes here, and some of them are actually legible, and I could read them. So when you were in Africa, there was a guy that you worked with in Africa that managed to seduce and marry a queen or a princess or something?
Oh, yeah. He was a medical student, and he was a good man. He was a moral man, and he wanted to help the world. So he went to Africa to be a doctor and, minister to these poor, benighted souls. And he was just running around being a jackass and met this one woman that just knocked him out of his socks. She was like 6 feet tall, fabulous woman. Well, you're a girl. I don't want to tell you
so
exactly.
She was a fine specimen of womanhood.
She was a fine specimen. And he fell in love and, settled down in this marital bliss, whatever they did. He married her. And immediately she started beating him up. And I don't mean slapping him or anything like that. She could evidently throw a hook, and that was vicious. And he wasn't used to that, and he kept saying, oh, I love you. How can you do this? And she was a queen of an African tribe, legitimate, and her family was very questionable about how she'd be so stupid as to marry somebody like this. But she did, and they did, and that's what it turned into. And finally, he just couldn't stay in the house. She'd physically assault him for just out of the blue. And I got my own theories about what that was all about. But finally, he just escaped from Africa, out of Africa. Here he goes. And he runs back to the United States with his tail between his legs and a bunch of nice artifacts. Then he realizes there are two guys from the kingdom who are come to assassinate him for dissing, the future queen of their bunch. So he was sort of like hiding out for his life and selling these artifacts from Africa and, just changing addresses every once in a while. Now, I don't know whatever happened to it. They might have got him.
Yeah, hunted by tribal assassins.
I know, yeah. It was two guys in suits, and he said they looked like these Islam guys.
They look like the Nation of Islam guys?
Yeah, they're dressed like, Detroit Reds boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think I know what that was about, but I won't go there.
Yeah. That's subject for some deep study. Yeah.
Okay. So, now, you worked on the King barge off the coast of Africa?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. There's two things I wanted to ask you about. One was the security detachment, I think, from the local army.
Yeah, I guess they were army.
Could you describe these guys and what they did? And
they set a .30 caliber air-cooled machine gun up on the helicopter deck, and then they had a couple of sandbags around it, so it was, I guess, an emplacement. And then they'd sort of hang around up there, all four of them, and they'd smoke dope all day, and I think they were drinking this beer that had a green alligator on a yellow label. And they'd just swing the barrel of the gun back and forth and chat with each other. And so, of course, that kept everybody on deck on their toes, because they actually had bullets in it. So that was all they did. They sat up there, they got drunk, smoked dope, and waved guns at people. And I think they'd be totally useless and wiped out in 3 seconds if anybody serious had actually attacked the barge.
Okay, but the barge did get attacked. So when the barge would get attacked by these people in their canoes, what kind of measures were taken?
Actual barge security was, the whole crew of the barge was from one village. They had the biggest, meanest guys. There were about 4 or 5 of them. and they had special coveralls that they wore. And these canoes would paddle in from the beach, and they'd come up to the side of the barge, and then they'd try to swarm up the side of the barge, and then they'd just grab anything they could lay their hands on, like a roll of line or a bucket or something. They didn't even know what it was, and they'd run with it and get back to the canoe. And because almost anything's worth more than anything in Africa, you know, and you can get money for it. So these security guys would watch for them, and of course the soldiers, they were up on the helideck playing with their machine gun, and these security guys would see the canal come in. They have a big 20-ton shackle, and they just drop it, and they go right through the bottom of the canoe. And then they'd drop smaller shackles on the other guys as they're swimming around. And that was basically...
What's a shackle? What's a shackle?
Well, it's like a sort of a U-shaped thing with a bolt to it, and you use it to connect cables together and things like that. But, you know, we'd just sit there and watch them commit murder. There were no problem. And I saw it myself at least 3 times, and I heard about a lot more than that.
So a 20-ton shackle would be a steel shackle that was tested to hold 20 tons.
Right, yeah, and it's big enough that you could do curls with it to work out, and you'd think of it as heavy curls.
Okay.
So it's heavy.
How far are these things dropping to the water from the top of the barge?
About 20 feet. So they hard on a canoe.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Well, what was the purpose of the barge being out there? Was that also a salvage operation or something different?
It was a leaking pipeline. And since it was in Africa, environmental things going on that we do, it had been leaking for 15 years or something. So the whole area had a sheen of oil on it. And basically we were floating in the middle of that. And we sent down divers and cut the existing leaking pipeline out. We moved it to the side, and then we attached coupling devices to both of the open ends, and then installed a new piece there to replace the old leaking piece. And then you tighten it all up, and then you pressure test it, and so forth and so on.
Well, wouldn't it be dangerous with all the oil? All the petroleum in the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. And that's why the water caught on fire with us sitting there. And then I think I wrote you a little thing about that.
Yeah. That's in Masculine Access. That story about the King Barge fire.
Yeah.
The guy that was instrumental in getting the clothes on the guy that ran this thing. He sounded like an interesting character.
Oh, you mean his servant?
Yeah.
Manservant. Yeah, the manservant Silas. Sort of a little wizened black cricket, and he would follow the barge superintendent around and do his bidding. And when the barge caught on fire, Captain was laid back in his big carved mahogany chair and dreaming of Texas or something. And Silas comes in holding his pants and says, "You might want to put on your pants for this one, boss."
So Anglo-American potentates that operate in Africa will just sit around in their underwear?
Sure. Yeah. Boy, why wouldn't you? That's what I'd do if I was king. That's what life's all about. Yeah, I bet Trump can't even do that.
Oh, man.
You ever get any take shore leave when you were over there?
I did.
Okay. Any misadventures you would care to relate, or if they're too misadventurous, we could just scrap them. We don't have to go there.
Well, I'm not going to tell you anything true to start with. I mean, good God. I could tell you about. You've heard of sea stories, right?
Yes.
I could tell you about the Brit and I walking by the president's palace. We didn't know it was the president's palace. We just thought it was a nice house with a big wall. And I'm wearing my redneck blue jeans because we don't show people our legs, and a T-shirt. And, of course, the Brit walking with me, the first thing Brits do when they get in the tropics is take off their pants. So he was wearing these sort of Daisy Dukes and a wife-beater T-shirt and some kind of goofy flip-flops or something. And we were walking along and just taking pictures and being tourists. And a gate opens and 4 or 5 of these huge Negroes come out, and they're wearing these really nice uniforms. And they're carrying these assault rifles, and they're armed to the teeth. And they just sort of dropped in front of us in a line. And I stopped, and kind of looked at them and raised my hands. And the Brit said something I forgot. And they grabbed his ass, drug him through the gate, and slammed the door. And I'm standing there with my hands up on the sidewalk going, holy shit. And it turned out he had outraged the king by wearing short pants. And that was the whole problem. It was his pants. You're just running around there with those Daisy Dukes on. You just can't do that.
Okay, so he wasn't up to dress code.
No, he wasn't up to dress code, and he was tossed in jail. You didn't get him out for about a day. Yeah, he spent the night in jail. That was interesting. That was the way it was, though, And the king would send. He had about 8 or 10 wives, and he'd send them out in this fleet of 3 Mercedes big sedans, like 600s, and they'd run around and shop. And nobody's allowed to walk on the streets of town while his wives were shopping. So there were a few extra municipal rules around there, Yeah. That was actually where that guy wrote Dogs of War.
Okay.
He wrote it in the hotel in Equatorial Guinea.
Oh, and that's where the Christopher Walken movie was made out of that, The Dogs of War.
Right.
Oh, speaking of mercenaries, you were on a barge that was following the hurricane around that slammed into New Orleans, Katrina.
Katrina, yeah.
Okay, so you were privy to the story of the hospital. What happened to the one hospital? What was the hospital?
Oh, Charity Hospital in New Orleans. There were basically just looters running around the streets in the aftermath of the hurricane. And I was offshore when this happened, but a fellow told me about it that was there to watch. And some gangbanger guys had taken over the bottom floor of Charity Hospital, and as far as I think they killed a couple of people. And they were basically looting whatever patients were in bed and taking people's watches and doing a lot of petty theft. But what they were really after were the drugs. So they were up there, beating their way into the drug safe or whatever, and this chopper lands on top, and these 8 guys in black suits jump out into the building, pip, 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 and a little shooting going on, and they just rolled them up and made them go away. And so they had private security there, okay. People like Blackwater that were giving a hand,
Well, that's good. That's an uplifting
that's
the story there.
Yeah, I'm sure they were glad to see it.
You had a friend named Smash.
Smash, yes.
What was Smash about?
Smash was a Korean War veteran that got stitched up by an American machine gun with several bullets coming up the leg, and then a couple in the torso, and so friendly fire. And he got out of the military with a good discharge, a medical discharge. But he recovered from it, and he became a commercial diver, and then he got injured diving. So he actually came into the same job I did. Smash. He was smashed a lot, for one thing, But it really goes back to a time when he was wearing a hard hat and it fell on the floor and the forklift ran over it. And
okay.
He had to turn it back in at the end of the day, and the guy said, "This is smashed," and that became his name. You get these names, you're never looking for them.
Did you have any nicknames like that? You've given us a few.
Nicknames. No, they just used my name, and my name's Riley. The younger ones call me Mr. Riley, and the older ones call me Riley. Right?
There was a shift supervisor, I think, that you were describing to me, how he went into action communicating with the diver when a boom went over the edge.
Oh, yeah.
Could you relate to that?
Yeah. He was the best, toughest, and smartest commercial diver I ever knew. And basically what's happening, we'd be both sitting in the control shack. I'd be watching the guys in the system, and he'd be watching the diver on the bottom. And so the diver has a video camera on his hat, and so Mike's sitting on the radio. Mike Kaufman was his name. He's wonderful diver and diver supervisor. He's retired now. Who was just over here the other day. And anyway, they had a crane on the edge of the boat, and it was craning down a rather large piece. It was heavy. And he stopped the load, and he stopped the load too quickly, and it caused a shock load, and the boom of the crane collapsed and went over the side with the diver beneath it. And Mike just starts going, swim right, swim right, swim right, swim right, shut up, swim right, fast, fast, fast. And so he did, and this crane boom just came whistling down right beside the diver. So it basically brushed him as it was going in, and which was a vast improvement on carrying him to the bottom and putting 20 tons of crap on his head. But the thing is that old Mike's sitting there on the radio, and he knew exactly which way to tell him to go. He had already sussed the whole situation in a microsecond, and he did exactly the right thing, and he saved his diver, and which is why he always worked. He was always totally on top, because you have to know where your diver is, where his hose is in relation to the boat, and this and that. So he was a master at that.
Wow. I forget if this happened when you were working on the barges, but there was a situation in New Orleans, one involving a famous singer, and the other one involving the state's attorney of Alabama.
Oh, God. The worst trip to the French Quarter that any man ever had. Yeah.
I think you could relate that, because I was really drunk when you told me. I really can't remember it, but
yeah.
I wrote it down.
Roger that. Yeah. Well, this guy shows up from Mardi Gras, and he's the Attorney General of the state of Alabama. He's driving a big old Cadillac with a hanging rack in the back and all kind of Italian suits and crap like that. He shows up Mardi Gras, and he has a couple of drinks, and he just doesn't stop. And he drinks, and the Cadillac's parked off in a kind of a dark corner in the quarter and doesn't move, and so pretty soon the tires are flat, and then the hubcaps are gone, and the wheels are gone. And guy's still living in this thing, and he's drinking, and the clothing rack behind him is getting smaller and smaller, and he, people are trying to move into his car with him, I guess. I don't know. And I guess he's ugly. And so one afternoon he found himself hanging with his left arm, hanging with his left hand out over the street, out over the gutter at a corner.
Oh, he was holding onto a light pole or something.
Yeah, holding onto a light pole. And with his other hand, he's holding his nose and blowing his nose in the gutter. And a city bus came around and hit him in the head, and that was it. That's a hell of a life change, huh?
Wow.
Yeah, so they lost a good attorney general there.
Wow.
Oh, man.
And what about the famous singer? You used to play a musical instrument too in school, didn't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I did. I went to college on a music scholarship.
In my notes here, I have slide trombone, and I grew to hate athletes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Okay, so
yeah.
So you were in a marching band?
Yeah, in high school, sure, marching band. Trombones are always on the front row, and trombones have these slides with which you can reach out, and the majorettes are always in front of you, so it's really the best seat in the band. Slide trombone, you got a lot of possibilities there.
I can see where you developed a hatred for athletes.
Oh, well, yeah.
Trombone behind the majorettes.
Well, Len, I hope I don't hurt your ears, but the way we always thought about athletes in the band is, all they do is beat you out and steal your women, and, I'm using the word women here in place of the real word. See, we Southern gentlemen always get edgy with me, talk dirty in front of women. Okay.
Thank you.
There was a situation in New Orleans with Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan, yeah. That didn't happen to me. It happened to a guy I was with in the bar. I don't know. I didn't even know who he was. And he didn't either. And he wouldn't have cared, this guy, But this little skinny dude comes up and elbows him at the bar, and it's Bob Dylan. And so then this fight occurs, and my thing in all fights is I immediately step back to observe so I don't get involved. And I was having no trouble with old Bob, but about that time the bouncer came over, and then here came the police, and they both went to jail. My friend got bailed out by the same people that bailed Bob out, and that was as close as I ever got to Bob Dylan. Yeah.
Did that end up in one of the songs? Did that influence all the songs?
What was that song? Working on a boat out at Delacroix and all that kind of stuff. So I went down to New Orleans where I was lucky to be employed working on a fishing boat out at Delacroix. Whenever he put that song out, that happened. I'd say it's late 60s, maybe.
I didn't expect to learn anything about Bob Dylan when I came out here to visit the man in the high castle, who has been instrumental in disabusing me of Eastern environmental notions. I was told on numerous documentaries that one of the threats to I think it's the ozone layer, or it's going to cause global warming or something, was bovine flatulence. That cows breaking wind was going to it's a super greenhouse gas because it's methane or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And the math had been done on this.
It's a war on testosterone. They don't want you eating beef. They want cattle to be outlawed because of potential greenhouse effects. They just don't want you eating beef protein.
I could take it so much more seriously if cows actually farted, but they don't. The worst they do is belch occasionally, but their system is such that it's impossible. Ruminants don't fart. They just don't.
Scholarly papers have been written on this. This is...
Well, yeah. You notice the difference. Take the word scholar and then take the word scullery. You see how close they are?
Before Riley became an LST,
yes,
working on barges, you worked for the U.S. military, right? You were in was it the Air Force that you were in?
Yes, I was in the Air Force.
What was your job, and this was in the 60s?
Yeah, it was 63. I got thrown out of high school, so I didn't have all that many options, and I joined the Air Force and got a GED high school equivalency there. And that was my whole plan. That was my entire interest in the military. Because I could see right away it wasn't like the Sergeant Rock comic books, that you could get hurt, So I worked on C-130s and C-124s as a cargo handler.
You would supervise the loading of men and material?
Yeah, eventually, but first I was just kind of assisting, but you got to learn how to, you got to set the weight up right in an airplane. You can't, throw all the lead in the ass end and the feathers in the nose. It ain't going to fly. So you got to know where to put the weight.
Okay.
So there's a little skill involved. Not much.
Now, were you ever in Southeast Asia?
In and out. I was never stationed there.
Okay.
We just flew things in, like beer and air conditioners, and flew things out like dead people,
Beer and air conditioners.
That was a big one.
They were common?
Yeah. And it was Budweiser beer, and it was, what was it, Jim Beam? Yeah, I think Jim Beam whiskey. Those were the things I remember.
Did they ship any refrigerators in to go with that beer, or were these guys drinking it warm?
Oh, no, they'd ship refrigerators in, but those were for the officers' club or something. They weren't, they weren't for going out in the field.
Okay. Something happened in the Canary Islands.
Yeah, I had too many flight hours. I was stationed in Charleston, South Carolina, and I had too many hours, so when you have too many flight hours in a month, they ground you and they give you another job. So my other job was basically like a guy in the airport that's selling tickets and arranging flights and all that. And these various soldiers would come in that were flying military flights back to their homeland after they'd been at Fort Benning jump school or something like that. So I sent some Pakistanis back home on a flight that refueled in the Canary Islands. And I was just filling in. I didn't know any better. Looked like a good deal to me. And it turns out that the owners of the Canary Islands and Pakistan, for some reason, were having an argument. I don't know why. I don't know what they got in common to argue about.
Spain and Pakistan were having a beef.
Yeah, I guess. And so the plane landed, and there was a tank sitting at the end of the runway with a gun trained on it. And all these soldiers came on board and grabbed all these dudes and drug them off and took them to a carcel, and imprisoned them. And it created an international incident. And I got an Article 15 and had to pick up trash along the side of the drive, for a month or something like that. Yeah, it's just one of those glitches in life.
Okay. Well, we found out that Pakistanis and Spaniards didn't like each other.
Yeah, at that time. Now, it may be different now.
Have you collected, like, undersea stuff, since you're involved in working on barges and rigs?
I have, yeah.
Can you tell us something about those things? And I know he has them, because I've seen a couple of them, but I can't remember what they are. Maybe send some pictures to Lynn, and she can put them up on those sites.
Yeah, I sent Lynn a picture of a volcanic bomb, and those are really good. That is a globule of lava that gets spit out the top of a volcano and then splashes back in the ocean and winds up on the floor like a sort of a deformed cannonball. And they call them volcanic bombs. And that particular one came out of about 400 feet of water, and it was, I don't know, 250 or 300 miles offshore. So that's how far that bomb got thrown. And so the diver was on the bottom, and the bottom was just littered with them, and he didn't know what they were. So he sent up a few, and we were looking at it, and some smart guy told us. And so then everybody had to have one.
Okay. Yeah, it's, the canoe destruction team would have probably liked to have it.
That would have worked good. That would have been good ammunition, and it would appear to be legit when they found it on the bottom. Must have been a volcano that's responsible for this. Yeah, it would have been smart to use. Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of the canoe destruction team, you had on these barges working off the coast of Africa, there were segregated dining halls. Is that true?
That's true. Yes, they had the African dining hall, and then they had the white guy dining hall. And,
well, what would if you had a brother coming over from the United States? Where would he eat?
He would eat in the white man's dining hall because the native black guys over there hated black Americans. They just despised them. Yeah, they really lorded over African blacks, like there's some sort of retards that can get it together to get out of town, and improve themselves and be enslaved.
You showed me this one thing. It looked like a type of oyster that had spines on its back, like a porcupine.
Yeah, that's a spiny oyster. And they only come out of water 150 foot, I think, or deeper. Olden days in Venice, they used to use these things to make women's purses with. And I think I sent Lynn a picture of one of those. And
where was the nicest place, do you think, you lived overseas when you were working on barges?
Aberdeen, Scotland.
How long were you there?
18 months. A wonderful town. But, it's all gray and depressing most of the time. It's Scotland, after all. It's always the gray, oppressive sky and the gray granite. And you had to work hard at not feeling gray. But it was a nice place to live.
Okay. And you were working in the North Sea?
North Sea, yeah.
Well, how was that compared to being in other bodies of water?
It's much rougher water. And of course, it's cold. And it's different because of where it is geographically. We used to have Russian submarines buzz our bells when they were on the bottom. And they were just stealing technology is all they were doing. But still, some of the divers would get unsettled when they'd turn around and see a freaking 200-foot submarine oozing by them. Yeah. And of course, we freaked out. What are we going to do? Depth charge them? That wouldn't work.
Right. Yeah. Now, I have reached a point when in my notes where I can. Apparently, we were getting pretty deep in the bottle of whiskey. This looks like a doctor's prescription. I can't even read this, so I've got it done with K and C Daddy.
Well, you wrote us something. You wrote us a story. You wrote a story where you were in San Francisco, and some neo-Nazis were going by with a Confederate flag, and that you found that upsetting. Can you tell us about that? And whatever else you can tell about San Francisco, because that's sort of local for me. I try never to go there, but it's close by.
Yeah. Wear your galoshes, San Francisco.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. I've seen the map. I was selling silver jewelry on the street, and I was down by Fisherman's Wharf.
What year?
81 or 2 maybe, okay. Something like that. Anyway, I was there. I had my little TV tray, with some silver jewelry, and I was waiting for a bunch of Japanese. They just can't help it. They'll buy silver jewelry for some reason. And here comes I don't know, I guess they were Nazis or something. They were all wearing, coal scuttle helmets and field marshal hats, and had the boots and some flags, and they had a rebel flag there. And I got to look at that, and my buddy Fast Eddie was sitting there with me, and I said, Fast, look at that, man. You got a rebel flag there. And he said, well, that really shouldn't stand. I said, no, it shouldn't stand. So I had a girlfriend or somebody there and sitting with me, and I said, watch the table here. We're going to have to go do a maneuver. And we just sort of ran through the ranks. And as we were going through, I just grabbed the staff of the flag away from the guy and took off with it, down an alley and just running for my life. And Fast Eddie was running interference, tripping people in the alley and that kind of stuff. And so I popped out a couple blocks over with a rebel flag running through the street. But that got some attention. So I said, I can't do this for long. Everybody will see me and they'll know where I went. So I rolled it up and took it off the staff and folded it up. And stashed it, and then walked along whistling with my hands in my pockets like I was totally without guilt. And I got away with it.
You were without guilt. They were besmirching your
Well, of course.
your flag.
That was why it was so easy to act with.
This man is a member of the. What's the order? The illustrious order that you're a member of?
Sons of Confederate Veterans. Yes. I have probably, I could track down at least 50 in my family that either served and survived or didn't. Now, they're a bunch of, you shake a shoe around my house, around my family history, and Confederates fall out everywhere.
And what's the term for, was there a term for the people that lived in your area that they would call themselves, or the people from a neighboring region would call them? I have no idea.
Stump jumpers. Basically, basically they were all stump jumpers.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, as compared with ridge runners or hillbillies. Stump jumpers. They don't have quite so much altitude as the hillbillies do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what were you doing in San Francisco? How long did you live there?
I lived there twice. And the first time I lived there, I was just a hippie running around on a motorcycle, and we kind of settled into the place like a bad case of foot fungus, and we infected that area for maybe a year or so, and then I moved back to New Orleans and I was working on motorcycles there, and then I came back to San Francisco again and worked for Dave Golden Cycles down in the I forget what they call it. But anyway, it was in San Francisco, and well, that was at the time when they were having the Alcatraz thing, where the Indians were capturing Alcatraz or something. You remember that?
It was a protest. It was supposed to be Indian land.
Yeah, they camped out there. Yeah. Well, their headquarters was right behind the motorcycle shop, so I got to know them. They were pretty good. Pretty good bunch of troublemakers.
Maybe this is where this. I deciphered one line in my drunken notes. It says roommate flambe and blowtorch.
Oh, yeah.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, sure. Afraid so.
Is there something we can't discuss?
Yeah. I was at a military academy called Chamberlain Hunt Academy in Port Gibson, Mississippi. And I was sent there when I was 13 in an effort to make me be more serious in school. So I got real serious. I had finished this plastic model, and I had a little roommate. His name is George Best, and he was a little redheaded pain in the ass. And I was filling my Zippo lighter with fluid, and he came walking into the room from somewhere, and he sees the car sitting on the edge of the table and says, "Oh, cool," and he rolls it down the table, and it rolls off the end and shatters on the floor. So he was standing there looking at it, and I was behind him, and I was just soaking his butt with lighter fluid. And when he finally noticed it, I sparked the lighter under his ass, and he took off running. And then I said, well, this was an error on my part. So I threw my lighter fluid down, took off after him to catch him and, roll him and put him out. And he didn't want to be caught. So, but I finally did catch him out, put him out. And I got in a fair amount of trouble for that. I used to not have too much of a filter between thinking and acting. It's taken me all my life. I mean, I'd be burning somebody today if I hadn't learned over the years.
Oh, be careful, James.
I can't believe I tell you these stories.
Well, I really can't decipher the rest, but I finally,
I'd say.
It looked like romaine flambe, and then it was roommate flambe.
Yeah.
I was running an operation on you.
I see. So that's why you need a tape recorder rather than a writing pad. You know?
Yeah, so none of this was for my writing. This is just for the Crackpot Podcast.
Oh, okay. All right, well, never having been involved in this sort of thing before. Well, James, why don't you tell her about the endangered species you've become aware of here?
Oh, okay. This is. I think I might be an activist by the time I leave this valley. There's a very interesting man-made feature around these bridges where these little streams, little brooks of water go under the clay and gravel county roads, and there's signs. And there's one of them that's a stand-up, like a street sign that must have cost a pretty penny to get made, and the other ones are right where the underneath of the bridge starts. Now, there's canvas and wire mesh tubes with sticks sticking out of them. At first, I thought that kids were like playing Army or something, and these were supposed to be like D-Day tank traps or something like that. But no, they're actually bridges that allow water to filter through them and allow mice, since mice can't swim, to clamber over the top of them. Because we know that before human beings were around, mice could not survive in the wild because they can't swim. So it's some type of pebbly meadow hopping mouse, or
jumping
it's a particular type of
meadow
like break
jumping
dance.
Prebbles.
Mouse.
Okay, I have this picture. It says, caution, possible Prebbles meadow, jumping mouse crossing ahead, be alert, be ever alert. Be ever alert.
Yes.
So this is to preserve a mouse.
The mice can now go across the stream, okay, because we can be sure they could never evolve into this life form until humans put these little stream crossings for them. And then up the bank, right where a homeless guy lived, where I come from, they actually carved this concrete ledge underneath of the bridge, so these mice have their own like permanent bridge underneath. That's part of the bridge. It's part of the bridge foundation, so they can get to the other side, and then they could get back on. They have the choice of which direction they don't want to go in. That they want to go in on these different things. So I'm feeling very good about it. I think it'll probably be good for the hawks because there'll be more mice for the hawks to kill. Riley was thinking of maybe a mass killing safari.
The fox would just wait by the bridge and have a snack after snack.
Yeah, I want to get on the dark web or something and sell guided hunting tours for the Prebbles jumping meadow mouse.
They're probably hard to hit.
Well, I'm sure they are, and you'd have to lie in ambush, and you could use an air rifle, you know, and you'd have to be camoed out because it'd have to slip you in and out of the valley, elude the game wardens and so forth. You know, it'd have to be a dark web thing. But the best thing about it is there's a second sign right down by the bridge, and it said, Prebbles jumping meadow mouse. Please use provided causeway. I mean, the sign is directed at the freaking mouse. As though they can read. Yeah, and I'll take a picture of that if you don't believe me.
Yes, that was uplifting. But I had to pose with that sign so that.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke.
I wish it was a joke. My wife wants to go down there and throw a chain around him and drag him out of the ground with a car. She just hates it.
So the Prebbles mice are not a joke.
No.
It's a serious issue that the people are trying to preserve these precious mice. But I don't understand because the creeks were always there, but the mice are instructed to use the bridges now.
But you know what? There's a chance. There's picks for your animals that will become the new intelligent species once we annihilate ourselves. Raccoon is one. Rat is one.
Rat, yeah, sure.
Now, mice, since they're cagier than rats because they're smaller, they're lower on the food chain. If you can encourage them to start using, they already like coming in houses. If you can encourage them to start using bridges and stuff, maybe it's just a matter of time before they go beaver and they start building. And because the beaver's kind of held back from becoming an astronaut or something just because of their body structure. But a mouse, you could jam a whole bunch of mice in like a little space capsule or something. We're going.
Yeah.
So maybe this eventually points to something like that. It's going to help these things evolve to like maybe Baltimore City High School levels of academic achievement.
Oh,
that shouldn't take long.
Good. I mean, you might be able to get like a set of mice that could read, right?
Well, maybe they already can. and we're just kind of slow to pick up on it.
Philip K. Dick, who wrote The Man in the High Castle, wrote a story that was turned into the movie Total Recall. And the name of the story was We Will Remember It For You Wholesale.
Yes.
And it was about alien contact. And I believe that the intelligent aliens that this man, who had erased this man's memory, they were actually mice. Mice were coming to Earth, and they were going to, like, wipe out humanity.
Yeah. Well, they're doing a pretty good job, no matter where they came from.
Okay, so there you go. That's my theory, and I'm sticking by it, okay? That this has been implanted in humans by our mouse handlers.
Yeah.
There's aliens that are mice. These are just like their feral little brothers down.
Not to be confused with snake handlers. And mice are nice. Just look at Mickey,
Yes. And people would be willing to believe that mice need a bridge to be able to get safely across the stream because they're willing to believe that us smoking cigarettes and our cows belching has more influence on global temperature than the sun.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
but people will believe that.
Well, people believe a lot, don't they? They believe all kinds of things.
Mice astronauts. That's it.
That's
Mousetronauts.
Mousetronauts.
This is the proof. Mousetronauts.
That's pretty good. Well, should we wrap it up with that, Mousetronauts?
Oh, I think we should have wrapped it up long ago.
What do you want? There is no more. If you find a place, please let me know. Take me with you when you go. Take me with you when you go. Take me with you when you go.